Hello, and thank you for listening to this episode of our Business Spotlight series. I am so excited on this session to have Alex Smereczniak with Franzy joining us today. Alex, thank you so much for making time to join us.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, for having me. Really excited to share our story and what we're working on and seeing if we can't help some fellow entrepreneurs or soon to be entrepreneurs find their way.
Us, wonderful. Common ambitions there to help those that are ambitious to find their way and stay close to it. Before we get into kind of knowing what our purpose is, which I know is a passion of yours, let's just start with a little bit of foundation on Franzy and what your organization is about and what you're striving to accomplish in your team.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the starting point for me was I got into entrepreneurship really early in college, did a college laundry and dry cleaning business, and eventually exited that, sold it, and then did 2 years of consulting at EY. I got my big boy, big four, job, but I ended up hating it. I love the people I worked with, but wasn't as fulfilled by the work I was doing, and found myself thinking more about how exciting and fun it was doing the college laundry business, even though I was getting to work on all these cool clients and projects at EY. So I quit my job, started another laundry business in 2016, and then over the course of 8 years, raised 33 million in venture capital, launched a few dozen cities, eventually vertically integrated and built our own laundry facilities with Electrolux. And through that, also pivoted into franchising those physical locations because we realized to scale quicker, that was one of the best ways to do it. And so the idea for Franzy came up when we started franchising our laundromats and seeing how difficult it is for prospective franchisees to match with the right brand. There's not a lot of good, easily accessible, transparent data out there about the thousands of franchise concepts that exist. There's also business, you kind of franchise brokers that you can work with. But the more I dug in there, I'd found out sometimes brokers might only have access to a limited inventory of brands, and so there was just all these like, lacking of tools and resources. And so we thought with Franzy, could we build a Zillow-like platform for the discovery of businesses, franchising to start with, and new franchises specifically. And so what Franzy is it's essentially a marketplace for prospective franchisees to get financing from lenders, to fill out kind of this AI generated matchmaking survey to find the best fit brand for the individual, and then ultimately resources to go through that sales or that mutual evaluation process with confidence and the tools you need to ask the right questions and to be successful.
And is that tool primarily for the use of the franchisor or the individual, ambitious individual slash future entrepreneur? Which is your primary user?
Yep. So we are built for the prospective franchisee, the person that wants to take that leap, and whether it's their first business they're buying or their 20th, and they just want a database and tools to go help make that more refined and de-risked. Franzy's built a series of tools to handle that. So we serve the prospective franchisee above everything else.
Okay. And as you think about your businesses and specifically now kind of providing a mechanism for people to put in some information and then get something returned that gives them some options to consider that may be better aligned with their interests and or skills, maybe from an application, just because Franzy is your tool and your focus, but just from a matching skills and interests with pursuit in general, or more specifically in the case of Franzy, a franchisor that could be a good fit. Maybe if you would just share a little bit over your experience, how to go about getting clarity on goals, purpose, mission in business, and kind of getting started on that pursuit, whether it's a new product in an existing business, a new venture altogether.
Yep. Yeah, so I'll start with kind of like the macro or
Please.
introspective place, and
Yeah,
then
this
I'll
is a
also talk.
space that's, you've got a lot of knowledge around, and one that I think our listeners would be benefit from.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start kind of more introspectively and then talk about how Franzy tries to suss some of that out with, with prospects and individuals as well. But I have a lot of friends approach me, "Oh, I love what you've been doing. I've been tracking from afar. I've always wanted to start my own business." Or I do some short-term rental stuff on the side too, and I've had people ask me about that and crypto and all these different asset classes and category. And the first thing I always tell people and give advice on is like really sit down with yourself, or if it's you and a spouse or your family, sit down together and figure out like what is it you want out of life? Is it more money? Okay, so you start with that, but why do you want more money? Is it because you really want more freedom and flexibility? Is it because you care about travel? Or like what are these things that are really driving you? And so I challenge people to ask like the five whys, almost like when a kid's like, well, why? Why is
Yeah.
that? I challenge people to do that to themselves to really
We get
unearth.
away from that sometimes, as we get into the routine of adulthood and kind of lose those foundational and fundamental things that are less on just basic needs and more on, what I really want versus just what's the easiest way to meet my basic needs.
Exactly. And
Mm,
sometimes people do this and they find out, oh, it wasn't the money. It's actually I don't feel fulfilled. Okay, so now that opens up this whole other world of, well, will doing a short-term rental fulfill you? And for some people, the answer is yes. For others, it's like, no, I don't want to reply to emails of guests checking in and out. And
yeah.
for others, though, they love the real estate and the learning. They love creating and curating an experience for people. And so, again, doing that why, you start to hone in on, is it financial related? Is it fulfillment related? And then as you get the answers to those questions, you can start to align potential solutions that address your whys. So if it's financial and fulfillment, and you want to be your own boss, then something like franchising could be a phenomenal way to accomplish all three. If it's I want mailbox money and it's purely just having more money to have more freedom and flexibility in life,
Hmm.
something more passive makes sense. Franchising might not be it for you because a lot of franchises required to be hands-on. And so I'll always challenge people to to ask the why. For Franzy specifically, let's say you've started to hone in on some of these answers and you think franchising might be one of those potential solutions that address what you're really trying to get after. For Franzy, we ask prospects a series of questions. All of our tools are free for people to use.
Okay. Good
We
to know.
say that we charge people in the form of information about themselves. It's kept proprietary, and you know it's not shared with anyone other than the brands that you decide to connect with and share that information with. But outside of that, we're using this information to really curate what are the best opportunities for you. And it's broken into four buckets. It's what's your financial readiness and what are you comfortable with? You might have X hundred of thousands of dollars saved up, but you might only want to invest 100K because the rest is diversified. And so we hone in on what the financial picture looks like, what your operational experience is, what your risk tolerance is, and what your goals are and interests. And we use answers and questions in those four buckets to refine
Via
and
the
short.
platform, or is this kind of an intake process?
So it's both the platform and through a coach. So you can talk to a Franzy coach to help kind of navigate some of this conversation. We've found that we want to meet people where they are. Some people love doing the research on their own and they
That's
just want
right.
to
Give it the option.
you have to connect with the
Okay.
brand directly and go.
Okay. I
So
was
with
just
that, and that
curious. Yeah, I was just curious about kind of functionally so that listeners can know how to navigate. So they can do this during, after hours, self navigation, but if need to, there's a warm contact. So you start with getting that understanding, get to know them a little bit through the system or through a conversation, a bit of discovery, very much like we approach business coaching, is first to really understand the individual and what their aspirations are, really getting down to their dreams. And this is even bigger than the goals, right? Because these are the big ideas and the what if, what's possible if there were no limits, if money and time were no object, what would you want? What would you do? That's the dream. And then you get it down into the goals, right? And here the acronym SMART for goal planning, but some specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound goals in there so that they can kind of identify their path of progression. Then I'm assuming then kind of once you've matched that personality type up with then and interests, then it returns options.
correct. Yeah. So our goal is, I mean, there's 3,000 plus franchise brands out there. It's a lot. It's
That
overwhelming. And
is.
which one's the right place? And so our tools help whittle that down from, all right, well, 3,000. Maybe you say you don't want food. So there goes, 1,500 brands. Oh, I know I want something that'll be outdoors and creates a positive impact on my community. Okay, boom, we can cut off another 1,000. So we're okay, I'm willing to invest 250K. All right, boom, there goes another 1,000. So we're getting down to this list that's sub 100. And then, the coaching element comes in where we're kind of massaging that list further. And our goal is to get you to top 5 brands to explore. And we can cycle, some of those in and out and then get to a top 3 really that we then connect you with. And that's when you start having the conversation with the brand. You start building rapport with the brand because ultimately that's who you'd be working with for the next 10 years is the brand. I joke with people, it's the second most important relationship you build in life, or decision you make outside of, your spouse. So you have your spouse, and then it's who am I going to get into business with the next 10 years? And this is a brand I trust and believe will support me through this journey.
And I think back to that conversation about your why, your purpose, your interest, your passion. And the mission with Franzy is to help 1 million people become entrepreneurs. So staying connected to that, obviously, we have a very common interest there in helping individuals become the version of themselves that they strive to be, and leveraging business and entrepreneurship as an avenue to do that. Now, as you've built these businesses, or the business you're specifically with now, and you think about talent and team building and the culture there, what are some of the wins that you've had? Maybe describe a little bit about your staffing model a bit, but the wins that you've had from staffing, and maybe just some of the key things that you look for, or challenges that you're looking to kind of get ahead of in building a team, keeping a team together, hitting deadlines, all those things, and the team aspect of that specifically.
Yeah, so I'll start with a book recommendation, and this is a fascinating story that um, I experienced with my last business. We went through an accelerator, a business accelerator called Techstars. Think of Techstars, Y Combinator, and 500 startups as like I don't know, the Harvard and Stanford and Yale of getting your MBA. They really help getting tech startups off the ground. And our managing director through the program we went through was the chief of staff for Palantir, Peter Thiel's company, and they had to hire incredibly, gifted software engineers. And I was like, how did you scale and hire such good people so fast? And what did you do? And he recommended this thing called the A method. There's a book called The Who that I highly recommend. It's about how to interview, how to build teams, it's really focused on the recruiting process more than anything though.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am a fanatic for this process because it really allows you to get to know the whole person. It's not a bunch of behavioral questions about tell me about a time you're on a team and you failed. It's not any of that. It's really, Matt, what have you been like your whole life since high school till now? What are some of the tough decisions you've had to make? How did you make them? We've all made wrong, decisions. When you made those wrong decisions, how did you react? What did you learn? So it's really getting to a sense for how self-aware is a person. um, and so the reason I share all this is, especially early on or for a smaller business, every person you bring on is incredibly critical to the team. Um, and so I look a lot for folks that are, very self-aware because I think those individuals are quick learners, they're quick to adapt and pivot when they need to. They're great at taking feedback. Um, and so I use that approach a lot. And the right people typically can rise to the top, and the people who are maybe more stubborn or deflect blame and are going to be harder to coach and work with
Mm.
also present themselves very quickly in this process.
Yes, yes.
Um,
And tied to that, I think that ability of self-awareness, kind of those that I think of as a trend, both through these business spotlights and just coaching and business coaching in general, is that self-awareness coupled with adaptability. And so the self awareness is obviously the ability to assess the situation and have an honest look at how you are influencing or impacting that situation, kind of what we own in it. And the second piece is the ability to apply that in a controlled manner that allows you to get the maximum result without overflexing maybe what you might perceive as a strength, but given the personality or traits of the individual you're working with, there's a bit of an oil and water type thing. So self-awareness and adaptability, would you agree those two packaged together kind of develop that emotional quotient, or that emotional intelligence?
yeah, I completely agree with that. And like anything, there's probably nuance or it depends. I realized as
Yeah.
I was sharing, the A method, that's really helpful for like full-time salaried, um, team members. I think you can't go into this level of, because this interview process could take hours. I mean, it can be hours and hours and multiple interviews. And if you're looking to hire a team that is maybe higher turnover, or it's frontline employees that might not have as much tenure as a different role that you're applying, interviewing for,
Mhm.
this approach I wouldn't take. I would take a slightly different approach. I'd do a modified version to ultimately try to get to the same type of answers.
Kind of streamline it
Um,
down a little bit, maybe.
yeah, so I just wanted to share that too for anyone that's listening that might be, looking this up and saying, "Oh, I'm going to use this for every single role I hire." It's like the book does a good job explaining that, hey, this is a tool in the tool belt. It's not the end all be all. Use this to hire for every single position you ever have open. But just wanted to call that out too, that I think some of these things, it depends on the role and the stage of the company as well.
Okay. I'll, kind of as we get near the end here, I'd like to ask a question that's a bit retrospective for you. You've come through a number of companies formed, built, and since sold, even. A dream that many of those that I work with currently have is to grow the business, to have multiple locations, and be able to actually have a sellable business or something that they can franchise or license. Very demanding. So, Alex, as you think about your own walk and the challenge that we all face in leadership roles of balancing life and business, words of wisdom from your personal experience or tactics and tools to keep life in balance and still accomplish your business goals, but to have the time and resources to enjoy that a bit. Anything you would share there?
Yeah, I think, and I'm sure one of the great entrepreneurs or whatever have said this before, and so this isn't an original thought, but something I've read and resonated with me, and it was the idea of work-life balance, especially I think in the kind of the age that we live in, is almost this kind of like false hope or fallacy that we might just be chasing, and if as if you're always chasing something and you're never getting there, you might feel unsatisfied, and so.
Mm,
I've reframed and said I'm not going to chase work-life balance. I'm going to chase work-life harmony is what I look for instead. And what I mean by that is, are there opportunities to overlap, time with friends, time to work on the business, time to spend with my wife, eventually, kids and a future family. And so I think about
yes.
a work conference as an example. Like a lot of people just go and it's Monday through Wednesday. They get there as early or like, as late as they can. They leave as early as they can. My thought is why not stay a couple days before and a couple days after and bring the family and you might be working all day just like you would if you were back home, but at least your family is there and you can see them at night and go enjoy dinners, bring them to some of the networking things. And you now have this place where you're getting to blend the two of your work and your family life. And
Mm,
same with friendships. Can are your friends other folks that, inspire you and motivate you? Or do you have a friend group that is a distraction for you and it's a bunch of partying and maybe bad habits or whatever it may be? Can you start to build a friendship, and a network of folks that also overlap with your business or with your family, and just trying to find ways constantly
mm.
to blend the two or three important buckets in your life together.
Wow, really some valuable insights there. I so appreciate you sharing that. There's absolutely, as Alex just implied, there's power in proximity. Part of the purpose for these business spotlights is to provide the valuable insights and information that those that are looking to continue to grow, daily progression, not necessarily massive action, but those one percenters, the daily habits that produce results. So there's power in proximity, I think, is kind of the phrase that makes me think of what you just described, surrounding yourself with people that make you better. The second piece of what you described there, I think, was super valuable as well, is just with respect to having kind of the rhythm in our reason. And so if you think about the, drying machine where it's out of balance and it's just making all the noise and bouncing around the room, it's incongruent. There's quadrants of our life that are out of balance. And so when we're in the center of all of that and our personal, the why of what we're looking to do and become, and in partnership with someone like your organization with Franzy can be matched up with a partner that has proven process and a brand that's recognized, and the individual can kind of bring their unique flair and flavor to that. So being aligned with our why helps us stay on track with our way and not get
Mhm.
lost or off route. So appreciate those insights so much. Appreciate you taking the time to share those with us on this session of our Business Spotlight series. As advocates for business, we hope that these thoughts and insights have been valuable to the listeners, and we thank you so much for your time, Alex.
Yep. Thanks for having me again, Matt. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Talk soon.